Hello, BookTube. I'm still getting my BookTube legs underneath me, so forgive any awkwardness, but I thought what better way to help that process along than with an enormous mail haul. So let's go through a ton of books together to ring in a new decade of us rifling through my mail together. So, I once again just can't thank you enough for letting me do this. Frida says hi as well. I can't thank you enough for letting me do this, for going through the mail. Some of you have emailed and said that you're grateful too. Some of you have emailed or left comments and said that it's kind of a pleasure to go through the new release section of your bookstore and see a bunch of books that are just put out that day that you actually recognize. So there's a little bit of what the BroTube channels call value. That's good. Okay, so this one, oh, hi baby, what you doing? This one is from Archipelago Books. Comes out in March. This is The Society of Reluctant Dreamers by Jose Eduardo Agualusa, translated from the Portuguese by Daniel Hahn. Hi baby, what you doing? It's a little thing. So we start the year with translated work. That's a good omen. Splitting through the clear waters beside the Rainbow Hotel, Daniel Benchimol finds a waterproof mango yellow camera that contains a series of strange and entrancing photos. After a bit of modern-day sleuthing, he discovers that they were the works of a famous Mozambican artist who stages her dreams in her art. Daniel is himself preoccupied with the alternate reality of his subconscious life. Revolutionaries and writers hide in his dreamscapes, offering him oblique messages. Daniel writes to the artist, receives a bracing email in response, and is soon caught up in her mysterious project with a Brazilian neuroscientist. Okay, all right. I'm laughing because it didn't take long for our made-up stories to suddenly announce themselves as made-up stories. But I'm also laughing because Frida, no, baby girl, no, no. She grabbed a package with a book in it off the bed. And I don't know if this is an increase in her ambitions. Suddenly she's not happy anymore with empty envelopes. She wants to tear apart books, but that must be discouraged. Okay, so this came out in 2017. So we start off with translated fiction. Very much translated fiction. Okay. All right. Let's move on. With any luck. Oh, what's that? With any luck, they won't all be fiction about insane neuroscientists and people who discover cameras. So this next one it's a novel. It's by Molly Polig. Comes out in April. It's called The Unsuitable. I'd like to think that the person who made this cover is aware of what they were doing. You never know. It's an ornate pair of scissors. For a family-oriented BookTube channel, let's just say it's an ornate pair of scissors. And we'll leave it at that. Okay, so this is the author's debut. Debut author Molly Polig has publicly discussed her mental illness and her crushing fear of, quote, modern spinsterdom for outlets such as Slate, The Toast, Racked, and The Hairpin, so for money. As a 40-year-old woman with a successful career and a brilliant new novel coming out to boot, Polig still finds herself racked with anxiety about being single and not having children. In her debut novel, The Unsuitable, she has channeled her frustrations at the expectations society places on women into a riveting subversion of the Victorian marriage plot. Okay, it's for fans of Ottessa Mossfred, and it reads like a dirty fairy tale, like a dark fairy tale for the age of #MeToo. And you know already, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, what my first question is going to be. Is this criticizable? Is this brilliant new novel criticizable? Or is everything that the author has written so far about her parlous mental state and the horrible patriarchy warning shots across the bow to me and my fellow critics that you had better not find anything substantially wrong with this book? I don't know. I'm not sure I want to know either. But it won't stop me from reading it come April. All right, bit of a rocky start. So I don't know what that means. I don't know why. Actually, to tell you the truth, not to start 2020 off and too political a note, but I don't have any idea why any prominent book critic anywhere in the world who is a man would review a book that invokes #MeToo in any way. If you write that, what was that? What did that say? How did it go? This is from Henry Holt. A dark fairy tale for the age of #MeToo. If you were a male book reviewer, why on earth would you review this thing? What possible upside could there be to reviewing it? You get, if you hype or slather it with praise, first of all, your praise had better not be measured. It had better be hysterical. You know, not since Virginia Woolf, better than Thomas Wolfe, better than Murasaki Shikibu, etc., etc. If you do that, you prostitute your professional reputation for the sake of the nodding, strained smile of a 5-minute ally. Someone who won't cancel you for the next 5 minutes because you have performed well on your hind legs as a pathetic little dancing dog. And if you don't do that, if you say it's average, it has all the faults of a normal debut novel, maybe even more because it dares to preach, which debut novels should never do. If you say anything like that, and let's say that comments like that are not outside the realm of possibility for this book, then what happens to you? Then if the author's feeling bored or is off her meds, then you become the subject of a social media campaign, all for the sake of reviewing a book. Why not just leave it alone? Treat it like a plague zone. I won't do that. I don't care one way or another. I've already been hashtagged. but I wonder at mainstream critics, the comments that we saw in that sales sheet and in the author's own previously published for freelance work pretty clearly says you are not allowed to criticize this book on formal grounds. And if you're not allowed to do that, if we've moved into North Korean territory, then why bother to review it at all? Right, Frida? We shall see. We shall see. I am now hoping for biography or history. Biography or history would be nice. Let's see what we have. Oh, okay, great. All right, this may fill the bill. This may fill the bill. Maybe not. There's a chance that it won't, but I'm hoping. I'm a cockeyed optimist. I'm hoping. This comes out in late February. This is the finished copy of These Fevered Days, 10 Pivotal Moments in the Making of Emily Dickinson. I don't think this has any connection to the absolutely ridiculous latest cinematic depiction of Emily Dickinson. I don't think it's connected in any way except good timing. Packed with biographical details, as you would hope any biography would be, yes. Packed with biographical details. Great. That's fantastic. Good on you. And told with the energy and propulsion of a great novel. Martha Ackman's book is essential reading for those interested in the famed poet. Ackman, who long taught at Mount Holyoke College a course on Dickinson in the poet's home of Amherst, follows Dickinson through her religious crisis while a student at Mount Holyoke, her startling decision to ask a famous editor for advice, her anguished letters to an unidentified master, her exhilarating frenzy of composition, and her terror in confronting possible blindness. Drawing on thousands of archival letters and poems, as well as never-before-seen photos. Okay. Yeah, because they're never-before-seen photos of Emily Dickinson. We'll have to hope that means never-before-seen photos of the woodshed behind the house or a tree. This book provides new insights into Dickinson's wildly original poetry and renders a concise and vivid portrait of American literature's most enigmatic figure. For those with little or no knowledge of Emily Dickinson, These Fevered Days is an invitation into the poet's extraordinary internal world and a depiction of the characters who peopled it, dispelling the pervasive notion of Dickinson as a reclusive and eccentric spinster. Well, good. That notion should get dispelled a little. It was still in large part true, but not as true as folklore would have it. But then how does that coincide with the some of the moments that we saw? Her religious crisis while a student at Mount Holyoke, well, she wrote, we know a lot about that religious crisis, and it was one of many. Her startling decision to ask a famous editor for advice. Okay, well, we know who that editor was, but we know it wasn't the only person she asked for advice. It would be nice if these, I haven't read the advanced copy of this at all, but it'd be nice if these fevered days portrayed Emily Dickinson as a slightly otherworldly figure who was nevertheless on the make, who wanted to be a publishing success. Nothing wrong with that. But the second part of that goes against the folklore. Okay, well, other chapters in this book delve deeply into the winter morning when young Emily announced her plans to be distinguished, a midlife health crisis that took her to Boston, and the beautiful spring day on which Emily died, leading to the subsequent discovery of a trove of her poems secreted away, poems that were ultimately to become some of the most important work in American literature. Okay. Well, I don't agree with the format here. I don't agree with the idea. This author is not unique. I don't agree in doing it this way, in 10 pivotal moments, as opposed to a soup to nuts biography. I think that lurking at the back of such a decision, whether it's a History of the World in 10 Drinks or History of America in 10 Objects or whatever it is, I think lurking at the back of decisions like that is an assumption, spoken or unspoken, on the author's part or on the publisher's part, that most of the American reading public can't handle anything more than that, narratively speaking, and that therefore we should break it up and make it very peppy and episodic. And I've never seen that done well, but we shall see. We shall see. So what else have we got here? We have lots of envelopes. We also have lots of boxes. So this could be a long one to start off the year. Let's see. Let's see what this next one is. Oh no. All right, this is a rocky start for the year, for the decade. This is a rocky start. Someone out there will be happy. That's this. This comes out in April, and it is Pause for General Screaming and Cheering, the new Roberto Colasso. The Celestial Hunter is the name of this latest wodge of undercooked meat. Let's see what we have here. It's translated from the Italian by Richard Dixon, may he rest in peace. The Celestial Hunter, in this book, Colasso tells a fascinating story about mankind as hunter, and about the relationship between man and animals throughout history and in the stories we tell. With this as his primary focus, Colasso takes us on a tour of Greek myths, telling stories of the prodigious hunter Orion, the Argonauts and their quest for the Golden Fleece, which has nothing to do with hunting, and of Artemis and Actaeon, the hunter who was devoured by his own dogs. But that was just his profession. He could just as easily have been a cobbler. The point of the myth is that he dared to look upon her divine nakedness. At points, Colasso delves into paleoanthropology. God help us all. He knows less about paleoanthropology than my dog does. God help us all. What a gigantic wind bellows of gas this thing is going to be. Charting the course of mankind's development to a scavenging meat eater and ultimately a group hunter. Okay, all of mankind's development took place hand in hand with agriculture. Agriculture. Okay, that's what has led to mankind's development. That is what has led to the printing press, to cities, to roads, to police, to writing guilds, everything, all of it. Pens, paper, a reading public, a cell phone. All of it is the result of agriculture, not hunting. Colasso also explores history and the writings of philosophers with particular focus on Plato's laws and the works of Plotinus. As you would expect from Colasso, you know what I expect from Colasso. I'm going to get it. I know already I'm going to get it in this book. His Celestial Hunter is filled with provocative ideas and surprising parallels as he glides from one topic to the next, continually expanding the canvas. As you should also expect, the Celestial Hunter will leave you making unexpected connections and approaching familiar topics from new angles. Could add new and totally erroneous angles. Okay. Well. Okay. I happen to know a Roberto Colasso fan who is getting this, and he's going to have to deal with it. Not only suffer through reading it, slogging through it in wading boots through all of this sheep dip, but also to write about it. Yeah? You're going to go on and on. You're going to waffle on and on camera about how much you like Roberto Colasso. How about you try to make sense of one of his books for a reading audience? I've tried that 2 or 3 times. And before I did that, I had long, red, wavy hair. See how you like it. Anyway. This latest masterpiece from Roberto Colasso, who has never, in fact, in his entire life, had any idea what the flip he was talking about from one moment to the next, comes out in late April. And this mail haul, I don't know what to call it. Here, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. Sooner or later, we are going to get to a Steve book. Sooner or later, instead of anti-Steve books. Sooner or later, that's going to happen. Okay. All right, this next one looks to be a thriller of some kind. This comes out in late January. This is the finished copy of Nina Sadowski's The Empty Bed. Very pretty bed. I could never sleep. I see these things on Instagram feeds of enviable homes and all that, My Best Living Now and all that, and I've actually seen them in books as well. This kind of thing, with a Alyssum model, sipping herbal tea while looking at this kind of a setup, a bed with a glass wall overlooking a busy city. I could never. How could you sleep in such a thing like that? How could you do it with everybody being able to see what you're doing? But I know this is supposed to represent, the ultimate in luxury. So what have we got here? In The Burial Society, which is this author's previous book, she introduced the readers to Catherine, the mysterious leader of an underground organization that rescues people in desperate situations and establishes them in safe new lives. Now, Catherine and her team must go on a dangerous chase to find a missing woman while also keeping the society's secrets safe from an ambitious young FBI agent in the second electric installment in the Burial Society series. Eva Lombard is sure she's being followed, even on the romantic getaway to Hong Kong with her beloved husband, Pete. I think that's probably the cover there. Not Pete, but that's probably some sort of luxurious getaway in Hong Kong. When Pete wakes up to an empty bed and a missing wife, he knows that Eva was right, and he's the prime suspect, trapped in a foreign country with no one to turn to. He calls on the CEO of his investment firm, Forrest Holcomb, who enlists help of his ex-flame, Catherine, the enigmatic operator behind the darknet witness protection program known as the Burial Society. and once again, the made-up stories rear their ugly head. a husband and his wife going to Hong Kong to soothe her fears that someone is following her, and then him waking up without her and being the prime suspect, that is a good novel. But then we get the science fiction gets hauled in. A secret paralegal society that he just happens to know because of his ex-flame. Catherine sends a team of highly trained society members on a thrilling mission through Hong Kong to find Eva, while she takes care of pressing business at home. In these intertwining storylines that converge in unexpected ways, not everyone who they appear to be, and not everyone who is lost wants to be found. Okay. All right. The author, Nina Sadowski, was the executive producer of The Wedding Planner, has produced many other films, and was president of Meg Ryan's Prufrock Pictures. Sadowski is the program director for NYU LA, a global programs initiative for advanced students planning careers in the entertainment and media industries. This is her third novel, following Just Fall and The Burial Society. And her next novel, Convince Me, is coming soon. Okay, well, that's great. Okay, so she has, the author bio, read between the lines, she has one thing going for her and one thing going against her. The thing going for her is that she has a very long history of telling gripping stories for large audiences in multiple media. And the thing she has going against her is that very proficiency is a zero-sum game and could make this a dumb book. As a result, this could be a thinly dressed up screenplay. We shall see. I don't want to sell it short ahead of time. I kind of sort of like the premise. I would have preferred it if it was just, the suspected husband on his own in a foreign city. But I will see. Maybe I should find the Burial Society at the Boston Public Library and read that first. In fact, I almost certainly should, right? Since it sounds like it's pretty dependent, the one on the other. And I do like a good thriller, and thrillers are by their nature completely unbelievable. So it's not like I'm I'm not asking for the moon or anything here. So, okay, great, fantastic. All right, this is going to happen a lot in these early mail hauls. We're going to see finished copies of stuff that we've seen before we start breaking new ground. And this is one we saw before. I got a lot of interest from a lot of you, and I confess, I'm interested in it myself. This is Adam Nicholson's The Making of Poetry. This is Coleridge, the Wordsworths, and their Year of Marvels. So it's not a tract, it's historical. This comes out in late January. It doesn't tell me anything about it. Miranda Seymour, Claire Harmon, Robert McCrum, Richard Holmes, all give it blurbs. June 1797 to September 1798 is the most famous year in English poetry. Out of it came Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Kubla Khan, as well as his unmatched hymns to friendship and fatherhood, and William Wordsworth's revolutionary songs in lyrical ballads, along with Tintern Abbey, Wordsworth's paean to the unity of soul and cosmos, love and understanding. Is that what it's about? Always wondered. In this book, Adam Nicholson embeds himself in the reality of this unique moment, exploring the idea that these poems could come only from this particular place and time, and that only by experiencing the physical circumstances of the year, in all the weathers and seasons, at night and at dawn, in sunlit reverie and on moonlit walks, can a reader begin to understand the genesis of the poems. What? What are you saying? Do I have to go to the lake country and tramp around at sunset in order to understand these poems? I think I understand them quite well, thank you very much, and I don't think you need to do that even if you didn't. That's got to be poetic license, no pun intended. Deemed, quote, a book of wonders by the Times of London, The Making of Poetry reveals how the verse of Wordsworth and Coleridge was made not from settled conclusions, but from the adventure on which they had embarked. Thinking of poetry as a challenge to all received ideas, stripping away the dead matter, looking to shed consciousness, and so change the world. What emerges is a portrait of these great figures, not as literary monuments, but as young men, troubled, ambitious, dreaming of wholeness, knowing they had greatness in them, but still in urgent search of the paths towards it. That sounds really good. That sounds really, really good. More than makes up for that falderall about needing to tramp around in the shrubbery in order to understand these poems. That sounds really good. And of course, we are back to normal, whatever passes for normal on this weird channel. We're back to normal in that my mail hauls will now also largely dictate my TBRs. Including that day's TBR. A lot of these finished copies I have been holding off on because it hasn't been the new year. So now I get to just, okay, this next one has 2. Oh, okay, all right. These are, boy, is this more translated stuff? It is, good Lord. Okay, this is, we've seen this already. This is, let me see if I can find it has deckled edges, and that makes finding any kind of inserted sheet difficult, and that's got exactly one half of you going, yes, that's right, deckled edges are the devil. But no, it only makes finding a pub sheet difficult. They're actually very nice. I don't seem to have one, but that's all right. I have one for the other book. Oh no, it's okay. This is for both. These are 2 books by Javier Cercas. This is Lord of All the Dead, and this is Soldiers of Salamis. And I got both of them at the same time. So let's find out why. If you remember, Lord of All the Dead had the gall, the effrontery, the temerity to call itself a nonfiction novel. I didn't like that when Truman Capote did it. I don't like it now. Let's see, though, why. In January 2020, Vintage will simultaneously publish 2 stunning works by the internationally renowned and prize-winning writer Javier Cercas. Am I saying that right? Cercas? Soldiers of Salamis, a novel about the Spanish Civil War, originally published in 2001, and which has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. Incredible. Good for him. And Lord of All the Dead, his newest, quote, nonfiction novel, as well it should be in scare quotes, since it doesn't exist, that for the first time delves into his own family's relationship to the war and finally confronts the legacy of his great uncle who fought in it. Though written nearly 20 years apart, the two books are closely linked by subject and theme, hence why I'm getting both of them together. They are searing explorations of the Civil War and its aftermath, and of the long tentacles of Spanish fascism and the mysteries and unknowability of history. Okay, so you can see already, if there's one thing that I have inflicted on you with these endless mail hauls over the years, it's the ability to think like a book section editor. And a book section editors all over the country are getting this, same as I am, and they're all going to have the same thought at the same time. This comes out in mid-January, so they would have had this thought already with the advanced copies. They're thinking, why not do these together? Why not? So let's stint Lord of All the Dead just a bit. We can still call it liminal, but let's stint it just a bit so that we can spend time on both of them, and maybe the whole author, his whole career, and maybe even a little bit of the Spanish Civil War if you're feeling a little windy. There are a lot of book section editors who probably thought that way. So if this author gets any attention at all in the London Review or in the New York Review of Books or whatever, that's probably the form it will take. The New York Times Book Review will probably do a twofer. Everybody who does it will probably do a twofer. Probably nobody will ignore the fact that they're getting a new printing of this book. They'll probably link it. So let's see. Let's see what this next one is. Okay. Good Lord, is this more translated stuff? Yes, good Lord. Okay, well, we have a theme for this mail haul, big as it is. It's a huge amount of translated stuff. I think we saw this already. This is by Elizabeth Asprink, translated by Saskia Vogel. Comes out in late January, and it is "And in the Vienna Woods, the Trees Remain. The heartbreaking true story of a family torn apart by war." And this is from the author of the acclaimed 1947, Where Now Begins. And in this book, she once again skillfully exhumes a fascinating history, revealing new information about IKEA founder Ingvar Kamprad's ties to Nazism. That was never too hard to guess from the instruction manuals that you get with anything you buy at IKEA. This powerful work is a vivid account of an anti-Semitic-infused Sweden as it turned a blind eye to thousands of Jews trying to flee Nazi-occupied territories. Within it, and connected in surprising ways, is the story of the Ullmann family in Vienna, Austria, told through their letters. Painful and evocative, this book is a timely reminder of the controversial question, what do nations owe to the refugees of the world? Okay, well, this sounds fascinating. I have the advanced copy, I think, somewhere, but I, of course, haven't touched it. So now I will. This is what I said. These things are forming my immediate reading. I will be immediately reading these things. And believe it or not, we still have a large number of packages left, but they're all boxes. That's great. Steve loves his boxes. And I think those of you, the keener-eared among you, will have heard the doorbell ring. It's entirely possible that we have even more books to go through. Let's see. I have had to manhandle that box. Didn't work well at all. Oh, what on earth? Oh, no. Okay. Well, I kind of wish this had a pub sheet. This has got to be a January book, though. I didn't know about it, but oh my God. Talk about a bullseye. This is by Philippa Chong, and it is called Inside the Critics' Circle, Book Reviewing in Uncertain Times. It's a book about book reviewing. Probably goes to the head of the line. Taking readers behind the scenes in the world of fiction reviewing. Oh, here I thought you were going to talk about the real world of reviewing. Inside the Critics' Circle explores the ways that critics evaluate books despite the inherent subjectivity involved and the uncertainties of reviewing when seemingly anyone can be a reviewer. Drawing on interviews with critics from such venues as the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and the Washington Post, I was not consulted, Philippa Chong delves into the complexities of the reviewing writing process. Complexities, oh please. Including the considerations, values, and culture of personal anxieties that shape what critics do. What they do is not shaped by any of those things. Chong explores how critics are paired with review assignments, why they accept these time-consuming projects, how they view their own qualifications for reviewing certain books, and the criteria they employ when making literary judgments. She discovers that while their readers are of concern to reviewers, they are especially worried about authors on the receiving end of reviews. That's her first mistake right there. Your first and only responsibility is to your readers. No, you shouldn't care at all what the author thinks or what your fellow critics think. Your only responsibility is to your readers. That's why you're there. Anyway, as these are most likely peers who will be returning similar favors in the future, critics' fears and frustration factor into their willingness and reluctance to write negative reviews. Well, there you go. Right? There's the problem right there. They're only peers who will most likely be returning similar favors in the future. If the review of this latest fiction work is written by a working novelist instead of by a critic, instead of by a professional critic, right? Then it's vulnerable. Absolutely. Then it's vulnerable. But for instance, Sam Sachs at the Wall Street Journal does not write fiction. Does not write anything except his column reviewing fiction every week. There are no favors for him to worry about currying one way or another. He can make the simplest, easiest decision that most book reviewers make, which is to tell his editors, I can't review this book, I know the author. Aside from that, he is as free as a bird in the open air. Doesn't have to worry about some novelist down the line praising his book in exchange for him praising theirs. And that's the way it should be. At a time when traditional review opportunities are dwindling, while other forms of reviewing thrive, book reviewing as a professional practice is being brought into question. Inside the Critics Circle offers readers a revealing look into critics' responses to these massive transitions and how, through their efforts, literary values get made. Steve shall be reviewing this book. Philippa Chong is Assistant Professor of Sociology at McMaster's University. And she is extremely young. And this is a finished copy, so it will have an index. Let us go looking in that index for people. Not for subjects, but for people. People. Let us look for people. Do we have any working critics mentioned by name? Kakutani is in here, but she's not a working critic anymore. Do we have any working critics mentioned by name? Doesn't look like we do. All right, well, it's fiction reviewing, so it's not quite a bullseye, but I'm still on it. Absolutely on it. Good Lord. Book reviewing in the modern era. How wonderful. All right, let's do this next one. What have we got here? Oh. All right, well, good things come to those who wait. All right, this comes out in late January. Well, I guess a book about book reviewing, even if it's reviewing the made-up stories, and even if it's written by someone who's younger than any article of clothing I'm currently wearing, is still a bullseye for Steve, right? I'm a professional book reviewer. I'm one of a tiny handful of them left in the world. So a book about book reviewing is certainly a Steve book. It certainly counts as a bullseye, but so does this next one. This next one is a 600-page biography of Dante. For all that has been written about the author of the Divine Comedy, Dante remains the best guide to his own life and work. His writings are therefore never far away in this authoritative and comprehensive intellectual biography, which offers a fresh account of the medieval Florentine poet's life and thought before and after his exile in 1302. Okay. And John Tooke, the author, is Professor Emeritus of Dante Studies at the University College London. So, he's a Dante expert. Fantastic. Incredible. This comes out in late January. Those of you who are maybe have Christmas book gift certificates burning a hole in your pocket and who are maybe interested, boom, there you go. All right. Fantastic. Well, that's that's great. Now let's do the next one here and see if we can keep that going. I knew these boxes would have good stuff in them. I didn't think it'd be quite that good. That's okay. All right, a book so nice they sent it twice. This is Dante again. All right, so we have 2 copies of Dante, and now I'm really hoping that that's it, and that this isn't some sort of massive clerical error where I get multiple copies of this book. Let us see. I'm afraid I'm going to see Dante in every one of these last boxes. Let's see. I am having to tear these apart. That is not good. Oh my. Oh no. Okay, well, we're sticking with poetry, but we're leaving Dante far behind. This is John Burnside, The Music of Time, Poetry in the 20th Century. A unique history of 20th century poetry by one of today's most acclaimed poets. It is not a literary history, if you can hear me over Frida going nuts. It's a survey, nor a textbook or primer. This book steps outside of an academic analysis of literature and discusses poems and ideas as they inform John Burnside's day-to-day existence, bringing together poets of times and places as diverse as Tsarist Russia, 1960s Harlem, and Ireland at the height of the Troubles. Okay, well, if we're going to be dealing with his daily existence, we should probably know who he is. He's a poet, novelist, and memoirist whose many books include Still Life with Feeding Snake and On Henry Miller. He's won many awards for his poetry, including the T.S. Eliot Award, Forward, Whitbread, Geoffrey Faber Memorial Prizes. He is a professor of English at the University of St. Andrews and a regular contributor to the London Review of Books. Okay, all right. A treatise on modern poetry coming to me right in time, because in 2019 we went through a lot of modern poetry together. I feel like I learned a lot. I want to continue to do that in this year. All right, let's forge on. We've only got a couple more to go, and then we'll be done. Oh no, hoist by my own petard. Here's a box that is too very heavily taped, and I don't have scissors anywhere to hand. The very first mail haul of the year, and I don't have scissors to hand. That's terrible. Fortunately, I have numb fingers, so I can just manhandle this thing without getting any ousies. Hey baby, I wish you could help. You don't even have opposable thumbs. You can't help much. All right, what is this next one? We'll see if this holds to my age-old edict that the harder it is to get a book out of a package, the less worthwhile the book is to see. Oh well, we don't know. This is okay. Great. So this is by Hyperion. This comes out in April. This is by Zoraida Cordova, and it is called Incendiary. Looks like a YA fantasy novel. Renata was only a child when she was kidnapped by the king's justice and brought to the luxurious palace of Andalusia. As a memory thief, the rarest and most feared of the magical Moria, or Mariah, Renata was used by the crown to carry out the king's wrath, a siege that resulted in the deaths of thousands of her own people. Now Renata is one of the Whisperers, rebel spies working against the crown. The Whisperers may have rescued Renata years ago, but she cannot escape their mistrust and hatred, or the overpowering memories of the hundreds of souls she's drained during her time at the palace. When Dez, the commander of her unit, and the boy she's grown to love, is taken captive by the notorious Principe Dorado, Renata must return to Andalusia and complete Dez's top-secret mission herself. Can she keep her cover, even as she burns for vengeance against the brutal, enigmatic prince? Her life and the fate of Moria depend on it. Her life and the fate of Moria depend on her choosing between one dreamy boy and another dreamy boy. One is slightly edgy, one is her beloved. They have different colored hair. And everything depends on which of those boys she chooses. That's what it sounds like. We'll have to hope that's not what it is. Okay, I am Renata Convida. I have lived 100 stolen lives. Now I live my own. Fantastic. So is this the author's debut? I don't know. Oh, let's find out. Zoraida Cordova is the author of many fantasy novels. No, okay, so including Star Wars, A Crash of Fate, the Brooklyn Brujas series, and the Vicious Deep trilogy. Her novel Labyrinth Lost won the International Book Award for Best Young Adult Novel of 2017. Okay. She was born in Ecuador and raised in Queens. And when she isn't working on her next novel, she's planning another adventure. Okay, fantastic. Let's see. It's not for a while, so I'll probably put it off in favor of reading about Dante, but I will get to it. And then we have the last one. This was an enormous mail haul. They won't all be this big. But this is the last book in the mail haul. So we'll get to 45 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. All right, this is... we saw the advanced copy of this. Here's the immense finished copy. This is John Connolly's From Peoples into Nations. It's a new history of Eastern Europe. Big, fat thing. The first book to trace the history of an area of Europe that has been at the root of conflict for generations. This book by historian John Connolly connects the stories of the region's diverse peoples, telling how, at a profound level, they have shared understanding of the past. In the 1780s, the Habsburg monarch Joseph II decreed that henceforth German would be the language of his realm. His intention was to forge a unified state from his vast and disparate possessions, but his actions had the opposite effect, catalyzing the emergence of competing nationalisms among Hungarian, Czech, and other subjects who feared that their languages and cultures would be lost. An ancient history of invasion and migration made the region into a cultural landscape of extraordinary variety, a patchwork in which Slovaks, Bosnians, and countless others lived shoulder to shoulder, and where calls for national autonomy often have had bloody effects woven among these ethnicities. Connolly traces the rise of nationalism in Polish, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman lands, the creation of the new states from the First World War and their later absorptions by the Nazi Reich and the Soviet bloc. No wonder the thing's so big. What an ambitious thing. So who is he when he's at home? He's a Sidney Hellman Airman Professor of History and Director of the Institute for East European, Eurasian, and Slavic Studies at the University of California, Berkeley. And he's written a bunch of other books, and he lives in California. Okay, so third week in January, coming right up. Good Lord. Okay, what a mail haul. So, we end on a very Steve-like note. I will dive into this book. So let's see. Let's see if we can do a Steve Pyramid with 1 million books. We have From Peoples into Nations, a sweeping history of Eastern Europe. We have Incendiary, about a young woman who steals lives for a king she no longer serves. We have The Music of Time. Sounds like a personal overview of modern poetry. We have, I'm not going to show this twice. This doesn't have to be twice in the pile. We have John Took's biography of Dante. Again, seems like the fruit of a long lifetime of studying this poet. Then Inside the Critics' Circle, a book about fiction reviewing in the modern day. Oh my. Then In the Vienna Woods, The Trees Remain. Study of 2 different families in a pivotal time in history. Then 2 books by Javier Cercas, linked by subject matter, but separated by 20 years of composition. Another book on poetry, this one, The Making of Poetry, by Adam Nicholson, about Coleridge and the Wordsworths, and being young, and not yet having ossified into their legendary selves. Then The Empty Bed, a man wakes up without his wife in Hong Kong and is the #1 suspect. The latest piercing, multidisciplinary Wandering by Roberto Colasso, the celestial hunter. These Fevered Days, 10 pivotal moments in the life of Emily Dickinson. The Unsuitable, keep in mind that is an old pair of scissors on the cover. And finally, The Society of Reluctant Dreamers, a new translation from Archipelago Books. So there you go. That is our mail haul for the very first time this year, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if I'd put both the Dantes in there. But that was a very long video. Sorry for the loquacity there, but at least we've got a huge number of books. We're off to a roaring start this year, and let's make the most of it. So I'm going to wrap this up and fix. Oh my God, the mess that Frida has made. It's unbelievable. Take me half an hour to clean it up, but she had so much fun that I don't mind. So I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, Book 2.